Fresh from a magnificent presentation on the future of what is illustration, I'm sitting here with the sun-drenched Joe Peterson, who is flexing and showing his skill, muscles, and his San Francisco attitude from the north end of the spectrum. He's the only person who's decided to don the sunglasses with me. Want to thank you for being here with me, Joe Peterson.
It is absolutely my pleasure, Louis.
Native. We've talked before on the telephone.
We have
nice
briefly.
Yeah, very briefly in development some time ago when those features were being developed.
Interesting.
I was telling Paul and Joseph, I said, when you were doing your demo, I said, this is exactly in my mind the fantasy that I had for how those things would be used. You were like the high watermark at this point.
That's
of how
crazy to hear.
Oh, dude, that was a great illustration.
Thank you.
Let's try
really
an experiment.
Appreciate that.
Hey, how about a little bit of noise in the main room for that fantastic illustration by Joe Peterson?
We're not synced up.
Yeah.
Something happened.
So you're originally from San Francisco.
I am originally from San Francisco, yes.
And San Francisco has played home to I mean, there is an unfathomable amount of art and culture in San Francisco. It's safe to say it's one of these major ports in America that just has this confluence of people.
Oh, yeah.
I have so many friends in San Francisco, Jeremy Mann, Carlo Ortiz, the whole crew up there up north. Hello. But how does the street art in San Francisco and that cultural sort of background affect you,
man,
as an artist?
I'm having kind of a weird moment because I'm
let it absorb. Want a moment?
No, I'm good. I got it. It's all.
Touch you? I can.
It's in. We can. Whatever
It's electricity.
happens.
Can you feel it?
Boom.
It's like a jellyfish.
I am really glad you asked that question because it wasn't until later that, in my career, I've kind of gone through a couple chapters of life and lived in a couple different places, worked at a couple different companies.
Where were you living at?
Right now I'm in Seattle.
Okay, where were you living at before?
Before, when I left the Bay Area in 2004, I came down to Orange County.
Okay.
And then stayed
what
there
a
for
difference.
Dude, don't get me started.
This is being recorded live.
I know. The difference is very wide.
Okay.
So anyway, after that, we went to Oregon for a year and just kept going north and are in Seattle now. It's awesome. Okay. It's kind of parts of it remind me of the old San Francisco that I know, that it's sort of a, kind of a mellow city, but a lot happening, and everyone's very connected, and there's a lot of culture. Anyway, I'm enjoying it.
You talk about the old San Francisco. Tell me about that and how the artwork on the streets affected you in that regard.
Well, yeah. So what I was going to say, what my long rambling diatribe was turning into the fact that now that I've been through a couple things in my career, in my life, I've sort of started reflecting back on, like, what was it really that I was inspired from in the beginning? Like way long ago, like 13 years old.
Yeah, analysis in reverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Like, whoa, how did I get here, and why are the things that are important to me, and like, where does my inner kind of visual vocabulary come from? And a little while ago, I kind of remembered all the passion and all the appreciation I had for street art and graffiti. And when I was a kid in San Francisco, going to middle school, taking the 19 Polk all the way from Potrero Hill over to Marina, riding through the TL every day in the morning. That was awesome.
Give us a pause for a moment to explain to them what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Dude, so back then, there's a neighborhood, there's a neighborhood in San Francisco called the Tenderloin, and it might be a little bit cleaner now, but when I was younger, it was an
safe to say there's nothing tender about the Tenderloin.
There's
nothing tender
about
happening.
The TL. So that's a whole other
we
discussion.
Could go on and on about the TL. Forget about it. Most people in there probably don't know what the heck's going on in here anymore.
But whoever's in the Bay understands what we're talking about. So I would catch this bus like all across the city, and all kinds of buses. Growing up in middle school, high school, elementary school. And at that time, it was the early 90s, and there were a few prominent artists wrecking the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right?
A very sort of explosive period.
So, among those artists was Twist, Barry McGee.
Yeah.
Demolishing the face of San Francisco with, like, the giant sad faces and the candy canes and giant screws. I remember on the beach, at Ocean Beach, there's a giant concrete wall and up behind the sand, between the sand and the cars. And there was this twist screw that was like super long, and you could walk next to it.
You have to ask yourself, when do they do this? You know, at
Dude,
night.
I know,
at
right?
night
Yeah,
when no one's
seriously.
looking, like teams of people.
There was also KR was there, who is, I think he's kind of a known guy now, but he kind of got more notoriety, I think, later because he started like selling his own inks and paints and stuff, and
Right.
sort of had a Crink. He stole his Crink because he was KR and he made his own ink. So
Clever
he was,
branding. Let me tell
yeah,
you,
it
that's
was good.
some smart brand management on that one.
So anyway, he was demolishing, and there were these people, I mean, just like all over the city. And another one was Reminisce, who I heard the rumor that Reminisce was a female, was a girl. And I kind of believed it because Reminisce would paint galloping horses all over the place.
Right.
And she'd hit up her tag, and she'd do throw-ups that were all over, but one of her throw-ups was a galloping horse. And so here I am, you know, Spy, shout out to Spy, S-P-I-E, shout out to Form. Damn, don't make me get started.
I've got him
So,
on a tangent here.
you
This
know
is
what I'm
fantastic.
saying? Like, when I was in middle school...
Struck the nerve with the man.
Yeah, so there was a lot happening back then, and the city was crushed. And I remember it was one of my first artistic appreciation sort of muscles or just like urges, is that the forms of the letters of the piece and the way they would like
form language,
cascade, the
absolutely.
form language, and the way you would take a letter and like piss it off.
Yeah.
And you could take like an R and give it its cap, and then the tail would just like, and the one piece of the letter would look like
an abstraction
like
of
an
some kind. Yeah,
abstraction. But then
each
later
letter
to
was just as,
me,
like-
later to me, what I started doing was I took those shapes and I tried to start making robots out of them, and I tried to integrate that flow and this like intuitive and natural calligraphic.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like both calligraphic and structural like logic and flow that I
Is
only
this early
first,
or later?
This is like when I'm
Years later. You're like a grown person.
well I
mean,
first saw it when I was a kid,
you've
and
taken
I've
it in.
tried to implement it into my work ever since.
So it's been sort of an underlying sort of construct for you.
Totally.
The fabric of you
It's
is
been
composed
definitely.
inside of that juice.
It's
or
something that
soup.
I've always rested on, and I'm still trying to capture it in my work, that feeling, that popping, that strength of when you see a piece or a
Right.
beautiful piece of graffiti, it almost grabs you, or its shapes are just undeniable. And God, it occurred to me like recently, I'm still trying to capture that stuff.
I can say that from the quality of the work that we've seen from you over the course of the last several years. I think that there's always been that kind of vibe. There's a very strong language that you're speaking.
Interesting, yeah.
When I look at it, I think, oh yeah, that's why I asked you all of that. In the
That's
first
so
place. I thought,
trippy that
trying
you
to tie
thought of that,
together. I
man.
say, oh, this
Yeah.
guy, he's definitely been influenced by that, because it's so striking, and it's
Wow.
subconsciously you're doing it. But you're doing it in a sort of this humanoid type
Yeah, I'm kind of
form.
doing it with form
Yeah, you're
and
just
like a
taking a form
character
language,
attitude. Yeah,
which I think is a very mature sort of. It's taken a long time, I'm sure, to come to these
Oh, man.
come to these ends. Of course,
Sure.
just like anything else, it's worth
It's
looking
still
at.
going on.
and it's still ongoing. But that most recent piece, did you have a title for that guy that we just saw?
You know what? I haven't named him yet. I'm
Okay.
trying to. Maybe you can help
we
me
can
think
talk
of.
about
We
this.
can.
We don't want to give it away to the world yet. So
Right,
maybe
not yet. It's-
maybe there's a handle for the Facebook and the social media. Send in your name request or your name ideas for the last piece you just saw.
What's the name of that
And maybe we
guy?
can work a prize out. How does
We'll
that
pick
sound?
out
Yeah,
the
right.
best one.
Maybe that'll be.
It's got to be really weird though. Don't just. It's
Yeah,
not
don't just send
Larry.
in anything. These
Yeah.
are street people here we're
That's
talking
right.
to. Okay.
We're creeping and crawling
dirt
through
under
the
them
alleyways.
nails.
It's not like.
Okay. There's something to be said about that culturally, because I think San Francisco at the time that you're discussing, much like Toronto at the time, this is very, very pre-corporation.
Yeah.
So very, very pre-corporate. I can say that in a way.
Pre-Twitter. I mean,
yeah,
the internet hadn't happened
pre-internet,
yet.
pre
Yeah.
everything.
Oh,
You had to
yeah.
actually ride a bicycle or a skateboard to go find your friends.
Fully.
And you'd say, did anybody see Mikey? And they'd say, no, you got to go down in the
You
other
gotta go
park.
down
You
here."
missed them 12 minutes ago, man.
Right.
And
You don't
you'd spend
just-
your whole day
That's
searching
right,
for people.
searching
like,
for your homie.
You're like 12 minutes too late
That's
every
right.
time you get there. So I think we're living embodiments of that. But you you have this sort of thing in the background as a fabric for who you are as a designer. It stays with you because, for the most part, I think we've heard this mirrored by many other designers who have come through here. You know, just sat with Jason Martin. He said, "Yeah, my upbringing."
Everyone has this line that's like all the way through them.
Yeah, this fabric.
Yeah, and you can trace it back.
Yeah,
right?
and this is my sort of my point of being with all of you guys, is to say, hey, there are people behind the scenes, behind these things that you love to play, these games you like to play, and everything that have real sort of. These are real American tales of the modern American artists.
Amen.
You know? So you, right now, to me, are the representative of an extension of street art in a whole new way in the digital. So that's how I look at it. I think, oh, this illustrative capacity, because of these features inside of this software, are allowing for a new type of flat, two-dimensional artwork.
Exactly.
Which could be taken and printed on some kind of paper, and we could go out tonight and sort of bomb Sunset Boulevard.
We could.
I mean, hey,
I'm kind of tempted. I don't want to get arrested.
Yeah, stop recording.
No, we don't want to do that.
He wasn't in town, and I was not.
We are not in Los Angeles.
No.
And
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So you do go on as a professional. I'll skip through school and stuff because that's
cool.
Yeah, we don't talk about school. You go on the career at Blizzard.
I did.
And how did this affect your development, working with the incredibly talented team? I mean, they always have they've had a very talented team for a long time.
Well, I was very privileged to end up in that situation.
Thank you for saying that. That's a good way to put it. Because I think they have,
I mean, that's how I feel about it. Like, it was my pleasure to be there.
Yeah. Mad concept artist at the time, too.
Actually, when I was hired, well, the art of Blizzard was always amazing.
Right.
And it always had that spirit,
That's what I mean.
Samwise and all that. Yeah. But for a time, I was the only concept artist in Blizzard Cinematics, back near the time of the first Starcraft cinematic. I got there right before the first the second World of Warcraft cinematic came out, and then I worked on Starcraft and Diablo III and all that stuff. But how did I end up there? What do you want to know? What do you want to know about it?
I just want
it
to
was
talk
awesome.
to you about
it was amazing.
Your
It changed my
experience.
life.
How did this affect your development as an artist, being there? I mean, you were, for a moment, you're a lone wolf.
Yeah.
So being lone wolf is a very precarious situation to be in because, A, the workload is heavy, but at the same time, there's a lot of expectation. How do you manage that expectation?
At a place like Blizzard?
Yeah, at a place with such a strong sort of, those are big franchises.
I had to kind of forget about it. Honestly, I had to like numb it out and just try to have fun and do the most I could. You know, we were in a position where I knew that, well, first of all, it's very easy to say that a large part of my growth and development there was that, you know, all my slip-ups would get caught. Like, they would be addressed, like, ASAP. Like, hey, cool idea, but
so an immediate feedback loop for you.
Oh yeah,
from a
for
learning
sure,
standpoint.
for sure. And just because everyone there was so talented, they were also experienced already. They knew what they wanted in terms of the IP. It was very easy to just help me patch things up and make it, you know, as tight as it needed to be.
Right.
But so, and I was lucky enough that they took on a younger guy who was just out of school, and like, you know, let me run with things, but also harbored me and helped me cultivate like the skills I need to give them what they needed. But in terms of like the pressure, I mean, it was very surreal because on one hand it was like, how in the hell did I get into this position?
Yeah,
like,
right.
What?
You know why I say that, right? Because today Blizzard for some people is like working for the Vatican.
Yeah. There was a poll in one of the game development magazines, I think, or a game development sites or something, and the poll was, and they polled the industry, so they polled working professionals in the games industry, and they said, what's your top place to work? And the list was number 1 was Valve, number 2 was your own studio, and number 3 was Blizzard Entertainment.
Where does this place, your own studio, exist?
It's like, it means you're doing your own thing. You're getting paid to do your own thing.
I'm the boss of me.com.
Yeah, right. Like,
how many
send
me's
the checks
are there?
to me. Like, I'll
send
figure
the check
it out.
to me. Write it to me.
That's the dream, right?
I don't know. I miss the people. Don't you miss the people?
I do. I do. I go back and forth.
Right?
Oh yeah, of course. No,
Think
and back in those early days, at my early days at Blizzard Cinematics, it was so much fun. Like, we would give each other the hardest time.
It's a lot smaller.
And it was all camaraderie.
Yeah.
The whole entire cinematics department was something like 28 people.
Not taking anything away from those guys today, because guys, if you're watching, top class.
I love all you guys.
Yeah,
you
goes
know
without
that.
saying.
Old school cinematics. Anyway, I was in awe of the fact that I was even there, but at the same, and on the flip side, I could.
Oh, pay attention to that guy behind the scenes.
I could like just numb it out and focus on the task at hand, and I knew that my concepts were going to help, push the vision that I knew that team was capable of. It was like I knew that our ceiling was way, way up. So I thought, well, let's just go for that.
That's a great perspective to have.
Because I knew where I was. I knew what I was surrounded with. And I was like, well, we're going to move forward. The Starcraft II is coming out.
Great feeling.
Diablo 3 is coming out. Like, let's step forward with these IPs. And so that let me kind of be really uninhibited and, like, just try to rock out,
A kindred spirit I found in you today. Because that's how I feel. I feel like I could reach that wall if I, my arm is not long enough, but my mind wants to touch that
Let's
wall.
like try and get there and see where
I'm trying to
we
find a way to like go as far as I
and
can.
then what,
Yeah, just beyond through it,
So that's where my head was.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's a very insightful sort of perspective, and it's giving a perspective at a time when of a company at a time when it's very different than it is today. I mean, it's
Very
much
different.
larger and a much larger scope, and the public perception of the company is so huge.
Yeah. Deservedly so.
So speaking of deservedly so, you have a Nomen DVD that
I do have a
occurred
Nomen
some
DVD.
time ago.
A little while ago, a couple years
still
ago.
Relevant, still relevant.
Cool.
Foundationally,
Hope you
I
think so.
Foundationally
Awesome.
speaking,
Yeah.
Any projects in the works because they've given me the spinning finger of death, and I
Okay,
could sit with
that
you
we
and
need to
talk.
wind
Yeah,
down. Right.
could
I know
talk to
this
you
is
for a long
like
time.
really now that my presentation's over, I'm like, let's just hang out and talk
Let's
about
talk
art.
about
Lau.
inspirations other than street art, comic books,
Sure.
illustrations.
Comic books, less Marvel superhero-y guys, more weird like Aliens vs Predator,
Cool.
Hellraiser,
Hey, right
like
on.
old school hard-boiled like Jeff Darrow and Miller, like the more obtuse kind of weird, Appleseed, like
I should have figured
Ghost in the Shell,
Yeah.
Appleseed, yeah. So comics were a huge part, but sort of only specific ones, like books of magic, like the more
Offbeat, off-kill.
offbeat,
Yeah. Sort of skipping
I
the
still
record
have,
player.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I
no,
still
right,
have
right.
my a copy of Hard Boiled that Jeff Darrow drew, and I just open it all the time and just look.
Oh wow, really?
Oh yeah.
You just
Oh
go back to that and say, okay, I'm going to take a
dude,
look.
you can't.
That's some cool. I feel that way about Mad Magazine.
Nice.
Really early stuff. I used to think, man, if I could just draw like that,
Yeah,
it would
dude.
be all right. And sort of,
Those drawings were awesome.
Yeah, they were. They're really neat. It's just
Yeah.
very sort of, in some ways, very sexual.
They were. Oh
when
yeah,
the
and it had way
representational sort
more
of
like
bulbous.
Yeah.
But coming back to the shape language, I think that's the high watermark today for you because they've given me the finger of death.
Okay.
I just want to say that your mastery of shape language continues to evolve and continues to inspire.
Oh.
And with that being
Dude.
said, we'll slip slowly out of the needle of street art and back into the main screen hanger. He's saluting. They call him Joe the Lone Wolf Peterson.
Thank you so
Thank
very
you so
much
much. It's my
for
pleasure.
all of your questions, your
Appreciate it.
time,
I appreciate
and
it.
your praise. It's ultimately humbling, and it's
Thank you.
totally my honor to be here.
Yes, sweet
so.
guy. We've spoken before, like I said. On behalf of Joe and myself, Louis Tucci, that's another wrap from inside the Nomen School of Digital Visual Effects store. Take it away, Paul, on the main screen.